Okay, this is lesson 4. This has to do with cut, copy, and paste and moving things around in the timeline. So now we've imported clips in lesson 2. We've assembled a timeline or a very rough cut in lesson 3, and now in lesson 4 we're going to learn how to move things around in the timeline. To do this, what we start off with is we import a brand new DRP, DaVinci Resolve project, into the project manager. So we go up into the file, project manager, and we'll see our new project here. But to import a project, we're going to right click and choose import. We're going to go to our documents folder and find our R14 lessons, and this is lesson 4, and you'll see the Age of Airplanes DRP. Now the important thing about this is you have to explain to people what is a DRP and what's contained in it and how do you get it and things like that. So you would definitely go through and you would explain that these are very small documents, only the metadata, not the media. It contains clips and timelines. So when we choose this, we're going to say open, and it's going to create a project for us. We can double click on it and open it up. And we don't have to save the new project. We never go back to it, so don't worry. You can say don't save or save, whatever you want to do. And it will open up Age of Airplanes, which will be offline. So you can tell people, so this is a DRP project. It has no media connected to it, but does have clips and clip names and metadata and timelines and things like that. Good for moving projects back and forth when the media exists already on your in both places on both systems. So if I wanted to move from a one desktop machine to another, and I wasn't, I would export a project from the project manager, and I would import the project on a new computer in the project manager, and I would get something like this where it looks offline. So you definitely want to explain, you know, a good 2 to 3 minutes of just what is a DRP. How do you get it? Why would you use it? And then once you open it, we can start to explain, so how do we link the media? And you can say all these clips are offline. And the way you could do it is you could select all of the clips and link them. But everything exists also in the master bin. So if we just right click the master bin and say relink the clips for the selected bins, because everything is offline and everything is in the master bin, we can say relink clips and then go and find your same project, R14 lessons project, which is in our documents folder. Here's R14 lessons, and you can explain that you don't have to go all the way down to lesson 4 if you don't want to. You know, you could just select the drive if it was on the drive. Now the less clear you are about where it is, the longer it takes to relink, but once you select a folder, it will link pretty quickly, and there are all our clips relinked. And it's so you explain that this is just a very similar project to what we've been creating. We just are jumping ahead forward where we have a bunch of timelines for the different lessons to show different things in Resolve. So we have our rough cuts bin, and you'll notice that our rough cuts bin has a bunch of timelines in it, and we're going to start with one cut, copy, and paste. So to load a timeline, I'm just going to double click it in there. And you can see up above is cut, copy, and paste timeline. To make sure that we're all kind of on the same page, you might want to go up and say reset layout. So now we have a timeline, and you could play over this if you wanted to.
So in this film, making a documentary about how the airplanes changed the world, it was really important to go out and
So you'll notice that if you played through this, it's nice to give people a sense of context of what they're working in. But you'll also notice that this audio has changed. Music is now in there. So to begin with, what you want to do is say, okay, now we have a project in here. We might want to, you can do a little bit more organization. For instance, if we wanted to come over to our interview bin, and just like we color coded our rough cuts bin, you can color code specific clips. For instance, I want to make all of my interview clips, I'm going to make them navy just to make it very easy to locate them. So I right click over it, select them all, right click over them, and then you'll see clip color, and you can just come down and choose whatever clip color you want. I'm going to choose navy, and notice now they're all highlighted in the timeline as well, so it makes it really easy to jump to specific types of clips or scenes or however you want to color code them. In the B-roll, maybe I'll select all the B-roll clips and make those clip color, make those brown. So now it even stands out even more. So you can do things like that. But when we want to start moving things around, we can do that. What we're going to do first is delete some clips. So very simply, we're just going to come into the middle of our timeline where you see these 01, 02, A380 clips, and then this Hawaiian clip, and that's the one we're going to delete. So you might come to the beginning of that brown section there and play over it so they can see the clips.
Slower or no?
And you could stop on this one and say it's pretty redundant to the one before it. And if we wanted to delete it, we could just select it. But this is where you might bring up, instead of deleting it like we did for lesson 1, where we just hit the delete or backspace key and it opened up a gap for us, if we hit shift, delete or backspace, so hold down shift, hit delete or backspace, it will actually collapse the gap. It will do what's called a ripple delete, or if you're familiar with Avid, it is often called an extract. It basically removes the clip and closes up the gap. Now, what about we move to the very where we started on that 01 A380 clip again. What if we wanted to delete just the audio? For instance, take a look at this shot.
Was it go any slower or no?
That clip is a nice clip, but it has the audio from the pilot in the helicopter, and we might not want that, but we might want to leave the video. If you noticed, when you select the video clip, it selects the audio that comes with it. So these two are linked together because they were brought in together, they were captured together. So if we want to get rid of just one of those tracks, just the audio, we need to unlink them. And the way you unlink clips is up in the toolbar. You have this link button here, and you can see it's highlighted. We're going to turn it off. You want to click in the background gray area just to have nothing selected, and then come down to your audio and select it again. And then you can just hit the delete key just to remove it. So this link button is what unlinks and links clips that have come in together. And we're going to turn that back on since we're on most of the time to be able to pick things up and move around both audio and picture that are synced together. Okay, so we did that, and now what we're going to do is delete a range. So we come in and we delete a range from an in point to out point to show it's not just whole clips that you can delete. For instance, we come to our 10 Maldives clips, and if you want to zoom in, you can zoom in on this just so it's easier to see a bit of the waveform. So with this 10 Maldives clip, it's the third clip in the timeline, we start to play over it. We're going to delete from the interview that comes up later.
It was possible to shoot it, we wanted to go shoot it. If we couldn't get the shot or the weather wasn't right, we would either go back to that location, stay at that location longer, or it didn't make
So he says, go back to that location, stay at that location longer. So it's right in the middle of the clip. You can see this big hump here. You can just before that, and we'll play it.
right, we would either go back to that location, stay at that location
So
longer.
there's the other hump for stay, and you might want to zoom in very tight on that, so then you can see here's the word stay right in the waveform. So we're going to come up right before it,
Stay at
and
that
that
location longer.
sentence, stay at that location longer, is what we want to get rid of. So what we're going to do is mark an in point right at the word stay, start an in, I,
Stay at that location
and
longer.
here's the word longer. And again, you can use your arrow keys. If you want to use J, K, and L to get there, you can do that. So however you want to do this, mark an out point. And if you want to come up to the playback, choose play around. You can choose play into out.
Stay at that location longer.
So I might just make longer a little bit longer. And now play that again.
Stay at that location
And
longer.
that seems pretty good to me. So now I want to delete this. And we actually do this incorrectly first, just so they can learn why we need to do auto selects. So we let them delete this first, and you can see how it's highlighted, how it's going to delete the audio, and that's okay. So what we do is we come in and we say, okay, so now we want to delete this. We can do a ripple delete, right? We're just going to hold down shift and hit the backspace or delete key, and it deletes it. But notice what it does. It deletes the music too. So we undo that, and this is where we explain this auto select button right here. Turning off auto select, you can even see the highlight. The auto select buttons, we explain that they're very important, that they do multiple things. And in this case, what it's doing is it's targeting the tracks that we want to delete on. So we leave them on for the tracks that we want deleted, and we take it off the track that we don't want to delete, in this case the music track. And now when we perform that shift delete, it does just the clip and its associated audio, but not the music track. So we're able to do that. Now you might want to shift Z or go back up to the view menu and choose zoom to fit, or shift Z to see the whole timeline. And once we delete the range, we go on the same clip, we start to use the blade tool, and we talk about splitting clips. And sometimes you want to split clips without deleting anything, but you want to split clips. So here again, we might zoom in. We basically take this first line and we separate it, and it happens to fall right along this cut point.
It was possible to shoot it, we wanted to go
So if
shoot
it was possible to shoot it, we wanted to go shoot it. And you talk about pacing, and you might want to separate these lines and all that kind of stuff, how it can create a little separation in a sentence to add more of a dramatic pause or something. So we're going to use the blade tool to add some space between this sentence and what comes after it. It happens to fall right on this cut point. So you can just move your playhead right at that cut point, switch to the blade tool, come over to audio, and talk about it being the left side of that blade is where you want to put it against the playhead, and click. And now you've created a cut point, and you've split this beginning sentence from the rest of the clip, and we switch back to the selection tool. And now what you're going to do is select this audio, but notice that it's still linked, right? So these two still have a relationship, this sentence and this video clip. So what we need to do is click in the background to deselect them, unlink them, and then we can select this clip. And if we want to move it, let's say we want to be precise and we just want to move it earlier by 1 second. So we talk about negative values and how we can use the keypad, but negative values will move us to the left, positive values will move us to the right. So if we would just want to make this come in 1 second earlier, we'd go -1 period, enter, and it moves that clip now 1 second earlier. And here you can talk about these badges telling us that we're out of sync, and if you wanted to, you could right click on them. This isn't really in the book so much as a note, but you can go into it a little bit just to tell them it's not out of sync, but if it were and you wanted to get them back in sync, just right click over the badge and you can. So now we could play this.
It was possible to shoot it, we wanted to go shoot it. If we couldn't get the shot or the weather wasn't right,
and then we would come back and make sure our linking is turned back on. Now we get into moving things around. We're going to shift Z again, or go up to the view menu and choose zoom to fit. And we're going to take these two A380 taxi clips. So I'm going to play over these.
back to that location, or it didn't make the movie.
So this clip and this clip, we want to move to the beginning of our timeline, somewhere right after this first interview. So what we can do is we can just do it very easily by selecting them, and you can talk about how you can command click if you wanted to command click or lasso them in the timeline, and then come up to the edit menu and choose to ripple cut. It's Command Shift X on the Mac or Control Shift X on Windows. So we're going to say ripple cut, and notice in the timeline it cuts them out, rippling them, bringing the timeline up, closing the gap. That's the ripple part, and it cuts them out. Now if we want to paste them, we want to move our playhead to where we're going to paste them, and instead of just paste, because paste will overwrite, we're going to choose edit, paste insert, Command Shift V, and paste insert will push everything down. So now we've inserted them, pushing everything else down. That's the insert part of it. Now if you just want to, so we do that once, just to cut and paste, but we'd also talk about if you just want to swap two clips. For instance, we want this Bay Area clip to swap positions with this interview.
It was really important. Every shot was original and that everything was
So we
real.
just want to swap that two positions. So to do that, you select the Bay Area clip, and you just hold down the Command key on the Mac or Control key on Windows and Shift, Command and Shift or Control and Shift, and you just drag and you see that they swap position, right? You can drag them anywhere along the line, and you just see that wherever you drag it, it swaps position. We want this just to swap one spot over, and then you can play over it and see.
Every shot was original and that everything was real.
And that is the end of that very short lesson. Now, this is an important lesson, if only because you need to import the DRP and link all the media, because this lesson is then used for the next 4 lessons. So it's very important that you do lesson 4 and you talk about the DRP and importing and relinking the media, because we use it in the next 4 lessons.